Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to another episode of the Atacs podcast. This is Adults Talk About Cool Stuff. I am your host today, Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina. It is April 27th, 2021, and I am joined by my partner in Hitmaning, Nate from Clayton, North Carolina. How's it going, Nate?
Hello. Ready to Hitman.
Ready to hit mans?
Yeah.
Well, we are a two-man crew today. The rest of the Atacs crew is too lame for Hitman.
Yeah, so they're not cool enough to be a world-class assassin.
They have not earned their barcodes. No. So we're going to hold it down with us two today. And to get the quick logistics out of the way up front, we're specifically talking about the modern Hitman trilogy, the 2016 Hitman, 2018 Hitman 2, and 2021's Hitman 3. And there will be spoilers for all three games. So if you do not want to be spoiled, you should leave now.
I believe the official title is the World of Assassination trilogy.
Ah, yes. Thanks for... See, that's why you're on here as the expert. Keep me straight. So, yes, we are talking about the World of Assassination Hitman trilogy. Because I don't know about you, Nate, but I did not play any Hitman before the 2016 Hitman. So, this is...
I think my only exposure to any Hitman game before that was one person on a dorm hall with me playing one of them, I'm not sure which one, and repeatedly dying over and over and getting very frustrated.
That sounds about right. So as far as we're concerned, this World of Assassination trilogy is Hitman, which...
That's all of the Hitman there is. That's it, beginning to end.
The only Hitman.
And IO Interactive seems to pretty much treat it that way, too.
Yep.
It's kind of like, this is the Hitman.
Mm-hmm. Which maybe that's a decent place to start is we're going to... Hitman 3 came out earlier this year, and that's kind of what sparked the idea for having this discussion. But we are going to talk about the whole trilogy. And maybe a good place to start is both you and I are people who did not play Hitman before 2016. So what was it about like this new Hitman that got you on board? Can you even explain it, or is it just kind of like all the stars aligned?
Yeah, it's probably some of just the stars aligning, but I mean, that 2016 reboot, start of the new World of Assassination trilogy, built like a really strong zeitgeist throughout 2016, which was in part because they did the weird thing and made it an episodic game, where they were starting early on in the year. I don't know the exact date. I don't have it in front of me, but sometime early in that year, they started this launch with one map. I guess that was the Paris map.
I think it was Paris. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was also the ICA
tutorial.
Yeah, there was the ICA facility. But I think the first thing was launched with Paris and the training facility.
Yeah, and so it was this new set of mechanics for the Hitman series, kind of refining a lot of things that series had I think tried to do before, and then launching as this episodic game where every month or two, I'm not sure on the specific cadence, but somewhere around there, they would drop a new big sandbox map with all these NPCs, and you have your main targets there, but then you can also do, the like side escalations and really like get to learn the maps and the routes and all the secrets, and I think that was a really cool idea that they did that they completely abandoned after that first game. Because I guess it didn't work for them financially, probably.
It's a weird thing to think about now, because at the time I feel like there was so much hubbub around it being an episodic thing. Like everyone was used to not just Hitman games, but AAA games at large. But I mean, specifically Hitman, people were used to them just being single games that come out and that's everything.
Yeah, and it definitely really worked in that time period where, like, you know, it's not like streaming culture was new, but it was definitely an exploding space on the internet. And so, you know, you had all these people, the influencers and, you know, games media all playing Hitman basically for a whole year, having lots of fun with it and all its wackiness, really getting to learn and master these maps and objectives and game mechanics that are really just a solid game all around by itself. But I think some of that would not have built up in the same way if it had been a single package that launched early in 2016 or later in 2016.
Yeah,
it's hard to say for sure, but that's kind of, I mean, the reason I ended up picking it up, I picked it up after all the episodes were out because I had been watching people rave about it and play it and have fun with it all year long. And I was like, well, I got to try this thing.
Yeah, I think you're right that it kind of caught that wave of increased streaming popularity at the right time. But yeah, but it's interesting that both you and I waited until everything was out to play it. So like,
right.
In a way, and I think I got it on like a sale too, because I think like
one of those end of the year sales.
Yeah, like it was either as the final episode came out or shortly after. It was like the whole thing on like 40 or 50% off. Like it was a decent sale too, and
yeah.
So I wonder.
I have no idea how it worked out for them financially. If a lot of people bought it on sale after the fact, and I don't know if maybe they could have done theoretically better just hyping a single product. It's hard to say. I feel like the momentum of that game was definitely helped by the release schedule in terms of just being in the public consciousness, but for whatever reason with Hitman 2 they dropped that model.
Yeah. And I heard, like, I remember seeing reports that Hitman 3 was I'm pretty sure I forget the exact wording. I know they recouped their dev cost very quickly. And I want to say it was also the best launch of the three, like that just sold really well in the first week or whatever.
I could see that because the trilogy definitely has a following at this point of dedicated fans.
Yeah. But yeah, I would be curious how that worked for them sales. And I think my impression of what they were going for is, by there being a couple months in between each mission, they were hoping players would use that, like that would give each mission its own time and breathing room, and people would really replay them and learn the ins and outs. Because it would probably be nice if we had someone who had played older Hitman games on here to tell us what was different. So I don't know if older Hitman games were like this, but this World of Assassination trilogy is very much built around playing levels repeatedly and really learning the ins and outs. I mean, each of these three games, these are 3 full price games. Each one has 6 levels or so on average. But you know, so like, they need each of these levels to be pretty substantial, and they are. They are. And they're meant to be replayed a lot. And I feel like that's what they were going for with the DLC type episodic, whatever schedule, whatever you want to call it.
Definitely.
And I think I think I probably would have ended up playing it even if they hadn't done it that way, but you're definitely right that there were just people playing it and talking about it all year.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, even if it didn't financially work out for them in that first game as well as they wanted, if in the long run it did help start the trilogy as a whole and like create this long tail of fandom and support.
Yeah, it seems like it to me, but of course there's no way to know how it would have performed in a different release style, but it seems like that way to me, that it definitely helped get people on board, like us who hadn't played the games before, with this sort of soft reboot episodic style that really was in the culture for a long time.
Yeah. Do you think, that's the main thing that got you to play it, having not played previous Hitmans, or do you think there's anything like specifically mechanical or whatever about the actual game, not just the release and the streaming and the coverage, that got you to play it?
It's hard to say. I mean, I definitely remember thinking that. I think that probably what happened is a combination of I was more aware of it and what it was because it sort of had that streaming culture around it, and so I was able to easily watch people playing it and having fun and being like, oh, okay, I understand what this is. Whereas previously Hitman had always been kind of nebulous in my mind. I was like, is this a super serious, like, action game with a grim, dark hero? He looks kind of silly. I guess I just never really paid that much attention to the Hitman series before, so I really didn't even know anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my mind, and this is, I still don't know how accurate this is, so I could be totally wrong.
Right.
But in my mind, it was very much, because it started around the same time as I think like Splinter Cell and like,
right.
So like in my mind, it was like that kind of like you're an assassin, not a spy. But it, like for me, it was in that era of like clunky 3D stealth games. I mean, I'm saying this is not a great big Splinter Cell fan, but like in my mind, I kind of lumped it into that bucket of game, for better or worse. And that could be totally, totally unfair to Hitman. Yeah. But for some reason, I'm just like, oh, this is some stealth game. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, but I think the new games, seeing them in action, it becomes very clear. It became very clear very quickly to me that like, oh, this is a very solid stealth action game in really interesting clockwork sandbox worlds. And so that just was appealing, and I grabbed it and played a ton of it and played a ton of the second one and played a pretty good amount of the third one too.
Yeah, I guess this is a good point to transition into like what makes it such a good stealth action trilogy. And like, I mean, I guess to start off is it feels, it does feel modern. Like it doesn't feel like an old, like it doesn't feel old and clunky. Like I feel like these stealth games I tried around the early 2000s felt. Like it feels modern, like the controls, like everything about the way it feels to play, I think feels good. I think it gives a lot of good feedback in the stealth department. I think there's a lot of really good indicators, both in the actual 3D space and also on the mini map gives a lot of indicators. I think there's a lot of good feedback in terms of like both sight and sound. And then even seemingly subtle things, but are very important, of like, oh, the people who can see through your disguise have a little white circle above their head. Just little things like that. Just there's a ton of those little things and they add up and they make it so that I feel like you're able to digest a lot of information very quickly just through how they present it all. And I'm sure they got to that point just by having made so many Hitman games prior. They probably were able to like see what worked and what didn't and just really refine it over time. But it definitely, to me, felt like by the time I played Hitman 2016, that they had really just figured all of that stealth action mechanics out, so that like I rarely felt all these three games play pretty much identically.
Yes.
So we can talk about this stuff that applies to all three games, but through them, I rarely ever, if ever, felt frustrated just due to clunky controls or stealth mechanics or whatever, like I sometimes can in stealth games. Like pretty much everything made sense and was satisfying to engage with, and it made slinking around and pulling stuff off fun. So, I mean, I feel like that's the first thing that they like absolutely had to get right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for all the stuff you're talking about mechanically absolutely works. But I think probably elevates it to like one of the best stealth action games ever for me is like how those mechanics are then integrated and the tool set you have then integrated into the levels, and what options you have to tackle challenges, because it's so easy to imagine a world where a game just as mechanically sound as Hitman comes out, but isn't told in a linear mission structure without the sandbox levels or anything of that complexity. And it would be like, okay, yes, the stealth mechanics are good, but I'm still just kind of working my way through hallways and courtyards full of hedges to get to a target. And that would end up being probably a perfectly fine stealth action game, but not what we got, which is like just a swirling maelstrom of systems and tool sets and NPCs and lore dumps and like just this immense sandbox to play with in every single level. Is what makes these games really special to me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that like, yeah, you need the core mechanics, but then the level design and everything, like, I can't imagine this being fun as like a linear game. Like, you need the playground to play around with, and the levels are so big and so intricate, and there's so many ways to do anything. Like, there's always at least half a dozen solutions to any problem, at least. And
yeah,
like that is where so much of the enjoyment for this game comes, is just like, all right, well, I want to, I'm going to go about this, this way, because this seems like the most interesting or entertaining way for me to go, or this is the one I happen to stumble into. But it like, it introduces that like a much better, more exciting, like emergent type problem solving of like, oh, I turn this way and I see this entrance, but what can I do with this? Oh, this person's walking by. Let me, do this. Oh, hey, look, a pair of scissors. Let me,
right.
just, whatever like sequence of events kind of spiral.
Yeah. And I think, I had a thought and then I lost it. Hold on. Oh yeah. So it makes, I think another thing that it does in its sort of merging of the levels and mechanics is these games make a lot of concessions in terms of, being realistic or simulation games, just for the sake of fun and for the fantasy of being the best assassin in the world, right? So like it just completely hand waves some things, or just tells you straight up some things that are true about how you can interact with a level. Like early on, I think in the tutorial level, your handler is like, remember, you're always the most dangerous person in any room. That's not the obstacle here.
Yeah.
And it's just like a really good way to clearly state who you are in relation to all these people in these packed levels. It's like, yeah, you could just pull out a gun and gun down a bunch of people. That's not what you're here to do.
Yeah.
As well as just basic things like disguises always work, except against the people they don't. And it's like the goofiest thing ever when you're dressed as a clown or a cowboy or
even just something like a chef or a drummer. Like even, very normal things. It's just amusing that you're this deadly assassin, but you're the cook.
Yeah, and whatever disguise you put on, Agent 47 absolutely knows the skill set that goes along with that down to it. He can jump into the jam session as the drummer and do just perfectly fine, to the point where nobody realizes he wasn't the drummer all along.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great point, that this game, I think, strikes the perfect balance of like creating a simulation that's ostensibly trying to simulate a somewhat realistic potential real world scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But at every turn, they always make the choice of, no, let's make this a fun game rather than overly realistic. So it's like they start with this realistic concept, but then they just like constantly pat it down everywhere and are like, no, this is a video game. We're going to make it a gamey video game.
Yeah.
And
to the point where it's not even realistic at all.
No, is
but,
that
but it still has this somewhat of an appearance of being realistic simulation.
Yeah, conceptually it's realistic, but like the nuts and bolts of how every little thing operates is not realistic at all. And to me, that was the right choice. Like, I don't think I would have enjoyed it if it was more realistic than it is, because that allows it to have the good feedback that it has. And like by being very gamey, it has a very clear rule set. You know what you're capable of doing. You know what works, what doesn't. You know when people are going to see you. And it allows you to be, like you said, you're the strongest person in the room. It allows you to be that predator and kind of plan out your method of approach and problem solve. And like no individual act is an issue. Like fighting someone, switching into a disguise, like poisoning someone's food, like throwing a fire extinguisher at someone's head. Like none of these actions are hard to pull off. Like none of that is the challenge. Like, so it makes it very video gamey of like doing these actions, and even doing a lot of them quickly is like pretty simple to pull off in an unrealistic way, but it works. Like, you can hide someone in that closet and you know nobody's ever going to detect him. And he's
nobody's ever going to look in any closet in this entire world. Ever.
Nope. And that unconscious person is definitely not going to wake up, and, you know, just all of those things.
I know if I got hit in the head with a flying can of tomato soup, I would probably never wake up.
Yeah. So yeah, I think all that just congeals to just make a very smooth, very empowering, very interesting, very exciting. Just those sandbox levels, as you said, they're just so fun to play in. And then you have all of the challenges and all of the different story paths and like, or whatever those things are called.
I forget the exact name, but story missions that it kind of walks you through, like, here's a specific thing you can do to get a special kill against the target. Yeah.
I mean, or you can just kill him by running up to him and strangling him with a fiber wire. You know, you can do whatever you want. But yeah, so there's just a million ways to tackle things, and all of the other stuff has just cleared the way to make that as seamless as possible, and opens the door to just have fun with it. And like we kind of already touched on this some, but like this game is really fun and really funny. Like like these surprise strength. And I think this is one of the things that was really communicated to me by following all of the streaming that first year of 2016 Hitman, was just how funny the same. Like I would almost say that these games are comedy games first.
Yes, they're the goofiest, weirdest thing.
Yeah, and I think part of it comes from like there is a very serious like the games are very gamey, but there is a very, at the high level, there's a very serious story happening, and all the characters are very serious, and you know they're talking about like large sums of money and, you know,
secret cabals of people influencing the world. I mean, this is basically like the plot level of this trilogy is like a Bond movie or a Mission Impossible movie at its most serious version of those. Like grim, serious espionage thriller of the highest order is what the like cutscenes but you get between the levels are.
You watch those cutscenes and it's like just the driest generic spy, super serious stuff ever.
Yeah.
But then you zoom down into the specific actions you're doing, and it's just like the most Looney Tunes-esque, like, I'm going to throw this can of tomato soup at you, and you're going to honk and have stars around your head, and like...
Then I'm going to take your chef outfit and I'm going to walk in and poison this guy's food.
Yeah. Yeah, it's... and that dynamic to me is never gonna not be funny. Like,
Yeah, it's always funny. Just no matter what, it's funny.
yeah, just the animations and like reactions to throwing blunt objects at people in this game is it's hard to describe, but it's just it's just comedic gold. And then on top of that, you get all of the banter you overhear from other NPCs in the levels. Is just like if it wasn't clear already, that makes it very clear that the writers and designers and developers of this game intended it to be funny, because they just say super weird stuff all the time.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Yes, this is all very intentional.
Yes. And the fact that they made 3 full games of it, it's clearly not an accident.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that it wasn't an accident. Like, there's a world where it somehow magically worked for the first one, and they tried to recapture it and just never could.
Right.
But
or they released that first game and they were like, people are laughing at our serious spy thriller. Let's make it more serious. That would be equally bad.
Yeah. But no, they know what they're doing. This is a fun, goofy sandbox. Yes, the backdrop is serious spy thriller, whatever. But yeah, it's meant to be a fun time, and I, for one, think it is for sure.
Absolutely. So let's get into some of the specifics of each of these games.
Yeah.
So, like we said earlier, each game has 6-ish main maps as part of the core package. So maybe we should just kind of call out some of our highlights, most memorable stuff from each one.
Yeah, so maybe we'll just first start with Hitman 1. I'll read off all the levels, and then we can just kind of call out what we feel like talking about. So yeah, the 2016 Hitman, there was the ICA facility, which was like the tutorial level.
Okay.
Then there was Paris, Sapienza, Marrakesh, Bangkok, Colorado, and Hokkaido. And then there was the Patient Zero DLC campaign, which neither of us played, so we're not going to talk about it. But yeah, there's kind of 6 main missions and a tutorial there for the first game.
Right, which the training facility tutorial is the same in all 3 games, which I find funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good tutorial.
It's a good tutorial level.
And you have all the same mechanics, so why not?
Yeah, with the first game, I mean, it's hard to beat showstopper mission in Paris.
Yeah.
the fashion show in this big mansion.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's such a good start for the series. Like, I feel like that, I mean, having played all 3 of them, like, that is still the level that I think of as like, that is new Hitman right there. Like, that level kind of has it all. It's like just a good, well-rounded map, but also a very good map, and just kind of has everything in it. It's very big. And I think it was the perfect first map. And like, in some ways, I don't know that they ever really topped that one. Like, I mean, they came up with different twists and maps that match it. But like, you know, if someone were to sit down to me today and was like, I'm only ever going to play one Hitman map between all 3 of these games, which one should I play? I would probably just say Paris.
Yeah, I would say Paris if you asked me that question.
Yeah, I mean, it's the map.
Yeah, it's very good. It's got so many good gags in it where you can dress up as the fashion icon. Yeah, Helmut Kruger. Or you can, sneak your way all the way up to the top and drop the big stage floodlights on the entire crowd and, maybe murder hundreds of innocent people.
Yeah. And just the map itself is so well designed. It kind of has all of the hallmarks that pop up in and out through all the other maps. Cause you have you kind of have your main, you have all of the courtyard area around outside, which is
just kind of like free space. You can just do whatever you want out there.
Yeah. It's kind of free space. It's a little less sparsely populated, but also because it's outside, there's no walls. So you don't have as many places to hide, really. It's a little more open. So then you also have the interior areas. You have the actual show floor. You have kind of the other places where people mill about, where you just have like tons of civilians. So you kind of have like those central busy areas. Then you also have like the areas to the side and underneath that, which are like a lot of like prep areas, like kitchen, like I think there's maybe a wine cellar or something. Like there's like,
that sounds right.
Point being, there's these areas where like the behind the scenes people are working, so to speak. And you kind of have the area right above where you have like the lighting technicians and stuff. So you kind of get, that flavor of personnel milling around, and they have very clear like logistical things they're doing. And then on top of that, like at the top of whatever mansion this is or whatever, you have the like really important people or whatever you have
the VIP area.
Yeah, you have the upper chambers, the VIP area, like where the real the real stuff is happening, like all the backroom deals, the that kind of stuff going on. So you kind of have like you kind of just get all of the flavors of the different types of areas, and you interact with all of these areas in different ways. Like the way you maneuver around each of these areas is very different. They have like very different levels of access and like the things you can do in them. Like in kind of like the workman areas, like the kitchen or the tech area, it's like, oh, if you get one of their uniforms, you can really play off as one of those people and do a lot, but you can't do much outside of that area as those people. So like,
right.
But then in the central area, like, oh, a lot of different costumes will work.
Right.
But you also can't really duel as much because there's so many eyeballs there.
You can't just take out random people because it's just packed.
Yeah. So there's just like that whole map is just like, it's got so much going on, but it's also so well designed. And there's so many opportunities to just do cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely the level that like when I bought Hitman and got all the levels and started playing it, I ended up just playing this level for hours and hours and hours and hours. And then kind of didn't do that with any of the other levels. I played a decent amount of Sapienza, which is the next level after that, which is a pretty cool level too, with some different stuff. But the rest of them from Hitman 1, I probably only played once, twice, maybe some of them 3 times. I don't know what your experience was like with the rest of those maps.
Yeah, so I know I've mentioned this to you before. So all 3 of the Hitman games, I played through each level once, just in a row. And as I went through them, I would like, maybe this is worth talking about, like our play style. So like my play style in each of these games is I played through each level once, just went through the campaign. As I was playing each level, though, I would save and load just to try different things. So I would like take out a target one way, then I would reload because you keep the challenge completion, and like try something else. So like I would end up taking out each target. Like, if a map has 2 targets, I probably would take each of them out like 3, maybe 4 times a piece. So like I say one playthrough, but it was like a long experimental playthrough with like, it's like, oh, I want to try this. Now I'll reload. Now I want to try to do this. But I would only play each level once, and then I would go back, pick one level that I really wanted to master, and play it a lot until I got full mastery. In Hitman 1, Paris was my full mastery level. So Paris was the only one that I went back and played through multiple times.
Right.
Sapienza was my second favorite map. I think that map is also really good. And it's got a lot of fun gags like the explosive golf ball and such. Which is, I mean, another big part of this game is they just have so many creative ways you can, like, there's just, like, why is there an explosive golf ball in this level?
Yeah.
Of course there is. And then, of course, one of the targets likes to play golf, so you can slip the explosive golf ball in his bucket of golf balls, and he's going to hit it and blow up. And, I mean, all of these maps are full of that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Your method of playing through these games is much more efficient than mine. I would basically start at the first level, play through until I completed it, escape or exit the mission, get my points or whatever, and then go back in, try to explore a different area or try a completely different approach from beginning to end. and I would do that as many times on that level until I got tired of playing that level, and then I would move on to the next one, which in most of these games means I played the first 2 levels a lot and then the rest of them not as much. For some reason, that's just where I ended up.
Yeah, I mean, if you knew you were going to play, like, basically fully master every level the way you were doing it, it's probably more efficient because you don't move on and forget the level a little and then come back. Like, you just get them all out at once.
Yeah, but saving and loading to complete challenges is definitely the more efficient way than, like, playing it through start to finish. But I was always, like, just trying to figure out, like, completely different routes to take to get to different or, like, fully explore the map that way. But yeah, that was generally how I would tackle these. So for Hitman 1, those first 2 levels were the ones that I played a lot and really liked.
Yeah, and the main reason I did what I did was, kind of an efficiency thing, because when I first started it, Hitman 1 at least, I didn't know how deep I wanted to go. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure I saw each level. So that was like, all right, I'm just going to play through each level once, and then I'll figure out what I want to do. And I kind of found that my appetite was, like, what I described as my style. And it was like, by the time I did that, I was like, all right, like, I feel like that's enough Hitman for me with this game. Were there any maps in the first game you kind of didn't like?
I know I didn't like I think the last 2 I didn't really like, but I also didn't play them more than a time or 2. Mm-hmm. I would bet that across all of these games, even the maps I don't like, if I went and, like, spent time and learned them, I would still end up enjoying them. Yeah. But on my first sort of reaction, the Colorado map, which is kind of like half wilderness, half like paramilitary camp, from what I remember, where it's like almost all military stuff, and you kind of just have to have the right disguise or you're just going to fight a lot of guys. And I didn't end up getting super into that. And then the Hokkaido map is in, like, a medical facility in Japan. And from what I remember, there was some system where there were, like, different key cards or items you had to find to access different parts of the level. And I just found that a little too tedious when I was trying to play that level.
Yeah, I mean, because it's been, 5 years now since that game came out. So my memory is not perfect, but my main memory of Hokkaido is it being a very restrictive level, like probably one of the more restrictive ones in this entire trilogy. Of just always, like, there was some key card system or something where it just it felt like it was really hard to maneuver around that map. And I remember it just, in that way, just being a much less free-form map than a lot of the others.
Yeah, like, I get what they were going for. Is like a very high security facility that you were in, and that's challenging for the last map of the game. But it didn't feel great on that first impression that I had of it.
Yeah, I remember liking the setting a lot, and I remember liking some of the, like, opportunities and stuff in it, but a lot of the maneuvering around the level in between was just not as fun. Colorado was probably my least favorite map in the first game. I mean, I liked all of them overall, but like, in the relative scheme of things, Colorado was probably my least favorite, just because I just don't think it was that interesting of a setting, because, like you said, it was just kind of like this paramilitary base. So, like, it just wasn't a very dynamic level from what I remember. It was just a lot of military dudes around in military huts or buildings.
That was my impression too. And I think you had a lot of targets, if I remember right.
Yeah.
It was like 3 or 4 targets that weren't very distinct. They were just kind of hanging out in different parts of the map. So there weren't, like, really cool things to do with them that I remember. It kind of just fell flat.
Yeah. I don't remember a ton about Marrakesh or Bangkok. I remember liking them overall, and I don't know if they were just like, oh, these are more generally solid Hitman maps and just nothing specific stood out about them. I definitely remember Paris and Sapienza the most.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think they're solid. Just I don't know that there was a ton that stood out about them over Paris and Sapienza.
Yeah. I feel like as a whole, that first game probably, this maybe we can return to after we talk about all three games, but is probably like quote unquote playing it the safest in the map design. Like I feel like those first four maps in particular are all kind of what I think of as like, these are good, solid meat and potatoes Hitman maps. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas they maybe get a little more experimental in the sequels. Whereas,
yeah.
I mean, and it makes sense. Like the first game is obviously going to be like, oh, here's your, it's setting the tone. It's establishing the standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, a lot of those maps I think are still really, I think Paris, Sapienza, and Bangkok, I remember really enjoying all three of those maps a lot.
Yeah.
And then Hitman 2.
Mm-hmm.
Hawke's Bay was kind of a weird, I remember it being like a smaller scope map. It was like on a beach.
Yeah, I really like that map. It is small compared to all the other maps across the whole trilogy, other than that ICA facility tutorial level. This is almost like a separate tutorial level.
Yeah, when I first played it, I actually thought it was the tutorial for this game, and then like after I finished it and like realized there was like story and more challenges and stuff, I'm like, oh no, this is a real level. It's just a smaller level, because I think even because normally the mastery level for missions is level 20.
Yeah.
But for that one, I think it was capped at level 5. So it was like,
oh, okay. I don't remember that, but that makes sense.
Just less challenges and stuff as well. Like they were very clearly like, no, this is just a smaller level.
Mm-hmm. It was an interesting level because they did set it up a little differently. It's just like a house on a beach, and you show up there and there's nobody there, and you can explore and walk around and see the different areas of the level, and then when you go do the mission objective in the house, that's when NPCs show up. And that makes it an interesting twist on like the normal infiltrating a secure location. Now you've kind of scoped out this area and gotten in, and then you have to get out.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, there's like a very clear pivot in the level where like a change happens, which is not true for most Hitman maps. Like most Hitman maps kind of run on their clockwork nature. No matter what you're doing, like you might disrupt one piece of the clockwork, but like the rest of it keeps operating as normal. Whereas this level, Hawke's Bay, is a very clear inflection point of like, it has one global operating state until you do a thing, and then it completely shifts, like the entire level changes.
Right.
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool, and I liked the small focus of it when I was starting Hitman 2, like just being able to really dive into that level and learn it all in and out very quickly. Got me back in the like, okay, this is Hitman mindset before moving on to the Miami level, which is the racetrack level.
Yeah, one more point on Hawke's Bay. Yeah, I think it was a really good first level for a sequel specifically, because like, the first game they had the ICA facility, which is the actual tutorial level. And I think Hawke's Bay serves a really good point between a tutorial and an actual mission, because like, if you're a returning player, you don't really want to do a full tutorial again, like the facility, like, that's probably too little, but a full on level would probably be too much. Definitely too much for a new player. Also probably too much for a returning player wanting to jump back in. Like I think having a smaller level is good to like re-get your feet wet before jumping in a big level, because the normal levels are so big, like they can be overwhelming. Like, like maybe this is a good time to talk about this. Like what your approach is when you first play a new Hitman level. Like I spend probably a good 20, 30 minutes just wandering the level, like not trying to complete anything, wandering the level, getting the lay of the land, getting a sense of where the different areas of the map are, like what I can access, what I might need to be on the lookout for, like, ooh, if I find a crowbar I can get in this area, like just trying to understand the ins and outs and how everything connects.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I do too. Just you want to kind of slowly case the whole area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like playing a map is like I said earlier. I would play through each level once, but like that's like a multi-hour affair. Like playing through one level one time is probably for me like anywhere from 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think starting with Hawke's Bay just is a good, because it's a smaller map, whereas the other ones can be overwhelming. So yeah, then the rest of the normal maps, there's Miami, Santa Fortuna, Mumbai, Whittleton Creek, Isle of Seagal, and then there were 2 DLC maps in New York and Haven Island, is what I have written down. Yep. I believe neither of us played the DLC map, so we're not going to be talking to those. We're just sticking to the main levels. But man, like looking through this list and like remembering Hitman 2, I'm just looking through this and I'm like, every single one of these levels these are all bangers.
Yeah, there's a great set of levels.
Like Santa Fortuna is the only one I look on here and I was like, I feel kind of indifferent on that one. Like, I feel like that to me in my head is equating to like maybe Marrakesh from the first game, where it's like, I don't think poorly of it. It just doesn't stand out as that memorable to me. I feel like it was just kind of a solid general Hitman map. Mm-hmm. But the rest of these I look at and they're great, and they're kind of great for different reasons. Like I think Miami is good. I think it's a good first real level in the same way Paris was for Hitman 1. Like I feel like Miami is kind of the Paris of this one, in that it kind of just has a bit of everything in it. It's just kind of the good general well-rounded Hitman map. And then Mumbai and Whittleton Creek, and I guess Isle of Seagal as well. Like all 3 of those maps, I think just get a lot of mileage out of their locations. Like I think you just really lean into the specific oddities of their locations and what's going on. Like, Whittleton Creek is, sleepy suburban America. And like, that's just such a different setting from every other map in Hitman.
It's so funny. I love that level.
Yeah. So that's the one Paris was the one I played multiple times in the first Hitman. Whittleton Creek was the one here, because it's such a goofy setting for this super serious assassination mission.
Yep.
Because you're like dealing with old man inspecting gopher holes in his backyard. It's like, you're used to kind of the more high concept, like fashion show in Paris settings. And then you're just like, I don't know, like suburbia, nowhere, USA.
Like feuding neighbors and a trash truck that you can stuff bodies into, and this weird basement with covered in plastic and murder tools. I don't know.
Yeah. They really do a good job at just like leaning into and playing around with like all of the like slice of life, small town America stuff, and like you could really dig in. It's not the high concept stuff. It is the feuding neighbors level of like like narrative stuff you're stumbling into, and it just. And when that's applied to like Hitman's brand of comedy, it's just so funny to me.
It's great. I love that.
Yeah. And then Mumbai was probably fun to me just because they just had some really fun scenarios. Like the whole Bollywood stuff was hilarious. And it's a really dense map too. Like I feel like there's a couple of varieties of like, when you get into the details, there's a couple of like your Paris or your Miami are like event type maps. It's like there's an event happening.
There are just crowds of people.
Yeah. But then you have others like Marrakesh and Mumbai, which are like cities. So like you have pedestrians and stuff happening in the streets and whatever. And like those 2 things kind of have different flavors. So I think Mumbai is just a really good like probably my favorite of like the city type of map in the whole trilogy.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. It's got a lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah, and there was also like, I don't remember the details, but there was like a whole subplot with like another assassin in that level.
Yeah, there was another assassin who was trying to eliminate one of your targets at the same time. And so one of the stories you could follow was like helping him out, because he's not as good as Agent 47. He needs a little bit of help, but you could literally just like nudge things around the periphery to help this guy pull off his assassination. Yeah. Or you could just take him out and take his sniper rifle and do it for him. That works too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like, now that it's coming back to me, I remember letting him carry it out and be like, yeah, you just did it for me.
It's very funny. Or you could use the giant oversized fan to blow the guy off the roof.
Yeah, which is probably one of the funniest assassinations in the entire trilogy.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really good. I just thought of something. This is kind of a separate line of thought. Something should have mentioned earlier, but when we were talking about how Agent 47 is just good at whatever he does, like, put on the drummer outfit and play the drums perfectly. It's also so comical to me how he puts on any disguise. Like, let's go back to the chef example, and he talks to another chef or someone else, and he never changes his voice. He always talks in his deadpan, monotone Hitman 47 voice, and nobody ever picks up on that he's not that person.
Yeah, there are some very specific examples of that I remember very clearly in the third game that are so funny that we can get to in a little bit.
Yeah, because sometimes you're taking the costumes of like very specific name characters,
right?
That someone else talked to before you took their outfit.
You're like, you were just talking to this person.
Yeah. And now you're Agent 47, who is a different build, a different skin tone, a different voice, speech pattern entirely. Like, and they never pick up on it.
Yep. Oh, man.
It's so good. I mean, and that wraps into all the stuff we were saying earlier. Like, it's not realistic at all. They're just, making it super gamey. But it's so funny.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So back to these levels, and then the last level, the Isle of Seagal, is just like your cult island where all of the world's leaders are gathering to, I don't know, make sacrifices and
the just like the backdrop of that. I don't actually think I like the level that much.
Yeah, so I feel like my memory of this, I have kind of a similar memory as I did to Hokkaido of just like, I don't think it had the specific like key card situation, right. But I remember more generally just having issue getting around the map. Like I mean, they were probably just trying to make it harder, but like, it just felt like security was way tighter and it just made it harder to do stuff. And I didn't enjoy that quite as much.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I enjoyed playing that level as much, but just like standing around the areas with NPCs and listening to them talk is wild in that level.
Yeah, the setting for that level is so good.
Just all these ultra rich, powerful people talking about basically how they're going to build global warming, climate crisis shelters in Antarctica and just leave the rest of the world to die because they're rich, so what do they care?
Yeah, the whole level is just a bunch of really rich assholes just being terrible people.
Yes, that's every single thing that happens in that level is some variation on that.
Yeah, so I think Hitman 2 gets a lot of mileage just out of its settings, like, and its backdrops. And like looking at this list, it's like Miami, Mumbai, and Whittleton Creek, those three in particular stand out as like just really strong levels, all three of them. And then the others I still liked, like Hawke's Bay, Santa Fortuna, and Isle of Seagal. Like none of those I disliked.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we get to Hitman 3, which came out earlier this year.
Yeah, the modern video game.
Yeah, so that's going to be the freshest on our memories.
Yeah.
But also, I think, I said when we were talking about 2016 Hitman that it was, probably played at the safest of the three. I think continuing the progression, Hitman 3, I think gets the most ambitious with its levels.
Yeah.
And I think it works to varying degrees, let's say. Like I don't think they're taking such huge swings that any of them are like a huge hit or a huge miss. Like it's not a wide range, but I do think they are more experimental than they were in the previous two games. Just to read. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just to read through the maps, we got Dubai, Dartmoor, Berlin, China, Mendoza, and the Carpathian Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Dubai, like Miami and Paris before it, is your very general, first Hitman map. Like I don't think they try anything weird with that map. I think that
not really.
I think that's them saying, "Hey, we're coming in. We're doing the Hitman thing we know how to do, and we're doing it well." And I actually really like the Dubai map, and I think I remember playing that Dubai map and just like, after having not played Hitman 2 for a couple of years and just being like, this is a really solid Hitman map, and it feels really confident, and it feels like they just know at this point what they're doing so well. They can just make a map like this, and it's just really solid.
Yeah, it's just like your basic like skyscraper gala event with very Bond villain aesthetics. And you can climb up through to the upper levels using disguises and all your normal tricks that you've been using, and find some creative ways to assassinate people or just push them off the skyscraper, which is always fun.
Yes. Pushing, just like throwing blunt objects never gets old, pushing people off of high places also never gets old.
Always fun. Somehow a game about a world-class assassin who can do anything managed to make pulling out a gun and shooting the target like the least fun and interesting option, which is really cool.
Yeah. You said earlier like that you can kind of do anything, but the game makes you want to explore all these other avenues, and that's absolutely true. And I think pulling out a gun is almost in some ways one of the tougher things because of the way it just sets off alarms and like unless you never get seen. But usually once you're pulling out guns, you're probably making
probably on your heels a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point about Hitman 3 maybe taking a little bit more of a swing or being a little bit more experimental, I think there are a couple of things that I would say on that, which is one thing that I think a lot of people noted when the third game came out is that they lean a lot more heavily on the meta storyline and incorporating that into the missions and into the levels in a way that fundamentally changes how you complete some of the levels. That isn't really seen much in the first two games, other than a little bit in that Isle of Seagal level at the very end of 2, where you have to escort the target out instead of assassinate him. There's more stuff like that in almost all of these levels, where there's some twist based on the narrative of the series and where it's gone at this point, that changes a lot of these levels in more fundamental ways. But then I think really tried to make not 6 Hitman maps like they've made 2 games worth of Hitman maps up to this point. I think they made 6 completely different, like not completely different, but like they have a very clear different idea for each of what these levels or locations are. Like first map in Dubai is the standard Hitman. Let's execute what we've done really well before. And then you get Dartmoor, which is a much more sparse and like low key level than a lot of Hitman levels. Like there's not as many NPCs. There's not some big event. There's not crowds. There's, this family of people who don't really get along, and this kind of mystery swirling around them, and all of their interpersonal struggles. And so like a lot of the levels have different ideas like that.
Yeah. Oh, just that it's a lot of family struggles, but it's also family struggles. It's your like high society British family that like, they have ties to, because the woman you're assassinating is involved in all this conspiracy stuff that you've, been following along all the games. But yeah, they really lean into the like the British, they're not royalty, but it like has that feel of like the British royal family, aristocratic family drama stuff where like, you have all of these family members, you got a couple generations worth at this point, and
you got the matriarch and the spoiled kids, and they're all rich assholes, and that's
but there was also a murder there, or a death there beforehand, so the whole thing that was built in this game or for this level is that there is an actual murder mystery to solve, which I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, but I did not like the murder mystery at all. I thought it was very dry of like, I don't know, just like you're just going through rooms and just rummaging through stuff, and it fills out your journal. And I didn't find it that interesting because it doesn't lean into the like mechanics and fun stuff that like, it doesn't lean into Hitman's strengths, but also it makes replaying that level fairly tedious because to get access to certain things, you kind of have to do some part of that murder mystery. So like if you're replaying levels for challenges, like you're going to have to repeat parts of that multiple times. And I just don't know that fits very well with like the kind of design philosophy of these levels and the challenges.
Yeah, I thought it was a little long and not super interesting. It's not even really a great mystery. Like it doesn't unfold in a particularly satisfying way. It's just kind of there. The one thing that I think it does do well is the first playthrough of that level. It's like right center in front of you. You can take over the role of this detective that's arriving at the mansion at the same time as you and perform this investigation, and that gets you that first level of information of kind of casing the level that we talked about before, just as part of a story mission. It kind of naturally does that for you. You get to know the mansion and all the characters and where they are and what they do. But I don't think the mystery particularly is fun to go through either.
Yeah. I think that level, other than the mystery itself, I liked quite a bit actually.
Yeah.
But like that act of going through that mystery, I just did not find very fun. And it wasn't terrible on the first playthrough, but I didn't return to this level, but I can't imagine like going through that multiple times.
So I did play this level multiple times, and I didn't ever repeat any steps of the mystery part.
Interesting.
To do other things. I just kind of sleuthed my way around. And I think one thing that actually is probably worth calling out here, because I think this was new in the third game, is the unlockable shortcuts that they added in every level that stay unlocked in future runs, future playthroughs. And there are some shortcuts in that level that let you bypass areas that would be more difficult.
Interesting. Yeah.
Otherwise,
I didn't think about that for that level. So, I've said before, there was one level I replayed in each game, and this one it was Berlin. And Berlin had. So I mean, I didn't experience the persistent shortcuts in any other level other than Berlin.
Yeah.
But Berlin did have at least one shortcut I can think of off the top of my head that was like, oh, to open this shortcut the first time, I kind of had to like do a lot of work, and now it just allows me to access this zone pretty easily. So yeah, I could see how in Dartmoor that could have helped circumvent some of those things. And I hadn't really thought about it until you just said it, but that's a really, like, I don't know how I feel about that mechanic overall in the context of the series, because it's a very strange thing to have it like have something persist between different playthroughs of a level. But hearing you describe how that helped you in Dartmoor makes me think like, oh, because they were trying kind of some different stuff with these Hitman 3 levels, thinking about that murder mystery specifically, it's like, oh, that might be tedious on replay levels. So maybe they kind of throw in the shortcuts as a bone of like, oh, well, once you do one of these more intricate things once, we throw in this shortcut so you can kind of circumvent it in later playthroughs and don't have to go through all that.
Yeah. I think it is kind of a way for them to say like, okay, you got to this high security, difficult area once. We're not going to make you either follow the story mission again to get there or do a lot of stealthing through tedious guard patterns to get there. So I think it works for me. I ended up using those shortcuts in all the levels that I played multiple times, and they feel pretty good to be like, okay, I know this map, I know where the shortcuts are, I can go straight to this area and do this cool thing to get this extra challenge. Yeah.
Oh, one thing we didn't touch on, in Hitman 2, did you replay each of the levels a lot?
The levels I played the most in 2 were Miami. Well, I played Night Call a decent amount, the Hawks Bay, the first one, the small one.
Yeah.
Just playing around in that level. And I played Miami a lot. And then I think the only other one I played more than the 2 or 3 times was Whittleton Creek, the suburban town.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. And then
that makes sense.
And then in 3, I played Dubai a few times. I played Dartmoor a few times. And then I kind of chugged through the rest of these. So Berlin, Chongqing, Mendoza, and the Carpathian Mountains, I kind of just went through to see them. And then I went back a little later and played Berlin a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, so Berlin is the next level, and it's the one I played the most. So it's the one map in this one that I fully mastered. And I thought this map was a lot of fun. I remember when the game came out, people were really split on Berlin. Like, some people really didn't like it, and some people really liked it.
I didn't like it the first time I played it because it is fairly different. Like I said, a lot of these levels in Hitman 3 really go for something different or unique. And I didn't like it the first time. But going back to it with the knowledge of what it was and trying to engage with that, ended up really liking it.
Yeah, I think I just really liked having multiple, because there's 10 targets and you have to kill 5 or 6 of them or something. It's something like that.
Yeah. The setup of it is you're at a nightclub in Germany and Agent 47 is being hunted by other, I think they are ICA agents, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Because you've turned against the ICA by this point in the series, and yeah, they're hunting you, and so 47's like, I'm going to send them a message.
Yeah,
and so they're looking for you in this nightclub, and there's 10 or so of them, and you just have to kill 5 of them to get the rest to basically say, scrap the mission, let's get out of here. Which is a really cool idea thematically. But it is kind of jarring when you get into the level the first time and you don't have a target, you don't have a mission objective, and then it's just like, there are people here and they're looking for you, and I don't know, take some of them out. And you don't get any indication of where they are or who they are. You kind of have to wander the level and try to look for them and listen for specific chatter and then identify ways to cut them out of the crowds and and take them out.
Yeah, I think what I liked about, because I even enjoyed it on my first playthrough, and I think what I liked about it is I didn't mind not having an explicit objective up front. First of all, I guess just like the way I canvas levels, that what we were talking about earlier to start with, is like in doing that, I just uncovered a lot of the targets as it is. Because like when you get near them, you like see them or hear them talking on their, headset radio, whatever. That it'll call them out and be like, oh, that's one of them, and then it gets marked on your map. So like just in the process of like my normal canvassing the map, I found more than 5 of them just doing that. But I think one thing I appreciate about Berlin is I feel like pretty much probably every other map in the game, the targets are behind some level of security or hoops you have to jump through. Like there can be multiple ways to break that security or jump through those hoops, but you can't necessarily be like super opportunistic in your, like, you have to, I mean, this is part of the joy of Hitman, is like, you kind of have to have construct a plan and like work your way through and like, line up all the pieces. I think what I enjoyed about Berlin is it's a flatter structure. So like there are these agents spread around everywhere and they're kind of all on the same security level. You have to do more of them, but individually they're not as, high up the chain or whatever. So like, I felt like as I was playing through that level, even the first time, you could just kind of be really opportunistic about your kills. It's like, all right, I identified this one guy. It's like, what if I just do this and this and this, and then I take them out. And I think that just allowed me, like, just had a much more free form feel to it. And I think I enjoyed that change of pace, instead of being like, okay, well, this person's up in the penthouse bunker or whatever, so I need to get the cook who brings the food, and then get this disguise, and then this, and like do this whole chain of stuff. And like it, Berlin just felt a little more loosey goosey, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, which I thought was fun. And also because you get to pick which 5 of the 10 you take out, like you get that's further kind of leeway to pick how you want to do it.
Yeah. And there's definitely some fun challenges there. There's not as many like big setup like kill moments as there are in some of the other classic Hitman levels from the other games, especially. But there are some fun challenges for sure with like trying to like I remember trying for a while to like get one of the challenges where you're like taking them out as they're trying to retreat. Yeah. So you kill the ones you have to kill to complete the mission, and then you're like, no, you guys aren't leaving.
Yeah. How did you do that one, by the way?
I think I've ended up finding out the path that they use to retreat. So I could I basically just like ran over there with a shotgun and like pop out of a bush and just mowed them down. They were running. So I kind of partially stumbled into that one, but like it wasn't on my first playthrough. It was on one of the later ones. So like I had, spent a good amount of time perusing the challenges. So like I kind of had in my head what things to be on the lookout for, but there was 1 or 2 challenges based around sniping. So I was doing one of those runs and I ended up in that like communication tower or whatever. There's some tower like a little removed from the warehouse. And I got up there and sniped some targets, and those were my final targets. So I completed whatever sniper challenge it was, and then people ended up fleeing. So you just see them running.
Yeah. So from the sniper perch, that tower, I picked off the other people as they were running.
That's good.
So I just
like that.
Picked them off with the sniper rifle. I also just like the setting in that level. Like it's like this like warehouse or some kind of plant or something. I actually don't remember what, but it's like some plant in the woods of Germany that's been taken over and converted into a nightclub rave, whatever.
Yeah, it's good.
And there's a lot of fun stuff going on in that.
Yep. Drugs and a biker gang
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah.
kinds of good stuff.
Sleazy businessmen in the bottom
Sleazy
floors
businessmen.
doing deals. Yeah.
I really like the one thing you can set up where I think you take over the sleazy businessman's outfit and use his phone to call a meeting with the ICA agents.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit down at this big desk and they all come in and the head ICA agent sits down in front of you and he's just like, look, I know it's you, 47. What do you think you're doing? We're all here in the room with you. You're not getting out of here alive. And then you just kick the desk over on him and kill them all.
Yeah. Kick over the desk, take cover behind it, and just mow them all down. I feel like that's one of the only times. Yeah, I feel like that's one of the only times in the entire trilogy where they like really want you to have a big gunfight.
Yeah, it's like a big shootout with all these presumably highly trained agents, but you still are just able to just completely decimate them because you're 47.
Because you're 47, you're perfect at everything.
Yes, you're perfect at everything. It was just very funny to go through that sequence and sit down at that desk and be like, just like most of the other events that you do in these games where you're like, there's no way this would work. This is stupid, 47. What are you doing? They're going to know who you are. And this is the one time where like, as the mission is supposed to go, if you follow the story, they're like, yeah, we know it's you. What are you doing? And then you kill them anyway. Yeah. It's great.
You kill them anyway. Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. So the next two maps, I don't know how to pronounce the China map, Chongqing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's Chongqing.
Chongqing.
I could be saying that wrong.
And Mendoza. I don't feel like either of those had quite as big of twists as Dartmoor or Berlin. The China map. The China maps thing in my head is it's a very like dual map. You have the above ground like cityscape kind of slummy area, and then underground you just have this huge high tech facility. So it's like a real dichotomy. Like I don't think many other maps, if any, have like such a clear it's almost two levels in one in a way. And both kind of operate on their own rules. Like the above ground city area is kind of a traditionalist, the traditional city-ish type of map. And then the underground facility just has like a lot of security key card stuff and like just all sorts of stuff going on down there. But then you also have like the story twist of like you delete something or upload, I forget, you like interact with this supercomputer or whatever. And then you have this escape sequence where you have to like, kind of like what we were saying about Hawke's Bay of like, it's one of maybe the only other time where like a switch happens and you're in a very different state for the rest of the level and you have to escape.
Yeah, I think that's the the main twist on this level is that there's kind of a cinematic narrative like end sequence to the mission that is really cool the first time you do it, but I don't necessarily think you need to like repeat that sequence, you know.
And I think on repeat playthroughs you don't do that.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
But it is neat. I enjoyed doing that and like seeing that facility kind of like go into its lockdown alert state and you just kind of like blowing your way out is fun.
I like that map quite a bit. And then Mendoza, I think, is the other map in here that just it was a good map, but kind of felt like a fairly standardish Hitman map to me. Yes, I'm blanking on her name. The woman who's kind of been with you the whole series is
Burnwood. Is that right?
That sounds right. She's like
something like that.
She's like physically in the map, which is a little weird, but I mean that doesn't really change how it plays at all.
Well, there's another like sort of climax to that map after you beat it, where she gets captured and you have to go rescue her. Or is that only if you do a certain story mission? Now I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, so I don't remember that happening. So either my memory is really terrible, or that only happens if under certain circumstances.
But did you do the story mission in that map where you end up in the like secret meeting with one of the targets? It's like all the important people from the secret society you're fighting against at this big table underground in like a wine cellar. And she's there. So. And she's there with you. If you do the mission, you're okay. And if you do that mission, she's there with you, and she gets like called out as an imposter and like are taken away, and you have to go rescue her from captivity. It like puts a timer in the scenario and everything. Like it like completely changes the level.
Wow, yeah, I had no idea that was a thing because I did not do any of that.
That mission story is also very funny because the way you get into that meeting is by taking over the guise of the I'm probably going to butcher this word, but sommelier, which is the wine expert.
Okay.
Of this, it's the whole level is a winery.
Yeah.
And so there's like this extremely ritzy, fancy, old vintage bottle of wine that they're going to open for this particular meeting that's celebrating, narrative stuff going on in the meta layer of that with the target who's going to become more important in this secret society. And so you can take over the disguise of the sommelier who's going to bring the $1 million bottle of wine to this meeting. And if you do that, you just walk in, and they're like, tell us about this wine. And of course, Agent 47 is just like, literally gives like a 2-minute speech about the delicate flavors of this particular wine and like what you can expect on your palate as you taste and smell of this particular vintage.
That's so good.
It's a great scene, and you should look it up if you didn't do that.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to. That's a really good example. I mean, Hitman 3 is fresher on our memories, but that's a really good example of the kind of like ridiculous ways that Hitman or Agent 47 like just
he's always got it.
Role. Yeah, he's always got it. He's an expert on everything. He can tell you, he can talk for 2 minutes about wine because of course he can. He knows all those things. Like
he's got it. He's good.
Yeah, and those things happen constantly in this series. It's so good.
That's probably my favorite example of that, just because it's so overdone. And then it escalates into this whole side plot of your handler getting captured and you having to go rescue her from a completely separate part of the map. It's really cool. I enjoyed that storyline.
Yeah, I didn't get any of that.
Yeah, that's funny because I just thought that was part of the level, and then I started talking about it, and you were like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, no, you had two targets. You had a woman and a man. I kind of bumbled my way through this level. So like the woman I actually took out pretty smoothly. I like worked somewhere on the north side of the map where there's like some like tower or rafters or something, and you can get a sniper rifle. And like I basically got a sniper rifle, then climbed up somewhere high and sniped her, and I did that fairly quickly. And then like the whole villa area of the map is like I did all the exploring like outside and like the fields and everything, and like that's where I got like the sniper rifle and sniped the first woman. But then like the other guy is like in this villa compound, and that thing is like surprisingly huge. It's like there's all these tunnel networks and stuff underground, and like all of the wine processing machinery and just all sorts of stuff. And and I like tried to sabotage some machinery that like called him down, and but I couldn't find an opportunity to actually execute him like while he was down there. So then I was like, well, and I was like trying to bumble my way into like executing without getting caught, like as he was walking back somewhere. But I just like executed him in some generic way, like the method I saved. I either did the fiber wire and hit him somewhere. No, I might have pushed him off a balcony, because like somewhere in those underground caverns, there's like a balcony, like these caves you can like push over balconies or whatever. But anyway, like point being, I killed him in not a like story fashion way. I just kind of killed him in some more generic way. And then like Burnwoods was like in kind of the general like milling about area of the map. Mm-hmm. And it labeled that as a possible exit point. And I like walked up to her, and Agent 47 like starts dancing with her, and they're like talking to each other as they're dancing. Like they're kind of like fake dancing, they're like pretending like they're dancing, but they're really having a conversation and just trying to be nonchalant about it. And then that ended the level. Like,
it's interesting.
Yeah.
That was not my experience at all.
Yeah, that's very strange. I might have to look some of that up.
First of all, the woman target I smushed in a giant grape press, which was fun.
Nice. Perfect.
And then I disguised myself as a wine expert to get into the secret meeting with the other guy.
Nice. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that map felt huge to me. I feel like that's one of the maps that I just spent. I mean, also the Chongqing, the China map. Both of those maps I felt like were just huge.
Yeah.
And then we rounded out with the Carpathian Mountains, which is probably my least favorite map in the entire trilogy.
Yeah, that's fair. I enjoyed it, but I would never play it again.
Yeah, it's just a very linear story. I mean, it is the one map in the trilogy that I would say is like just purely a story thing.
Yeah. It's a linear action sort of set piece on a moving train where everyone is going to try to kill you if they see you, basically. And you can either try to sneak past them or just gun them down. It doesn't really matter.
And gunning them and getting seen doesn't even count against like your stealth ratings or whatever.
Yeah. They're pretty open and upfront about the fact that like this is a set piece level to end off the trilogy.
Yeah.
And I think it works fine to end the trilogy that way. But I would never replay that level for any reason.
I mean, I didn't mind it as a way to end the game story-wise. I don't think it leans into any of Hitman's strengths, like any of the trilogy strengths. And I think given that, I guess I kind of have two problems with it. One, given all of the other two games had 6 like quote unquote real maps, for this to be one of the 6 felt like kind of a little bit of a letdown. Like if there were 7 maps and this was one of them, I wouldn't dislike it as much. I don't think.
Yeah.
And 2, I think for what it was, the set PC thing it was trying to be, I think it just went on too long. Like, I mean, it's the shortest level in this game, but it was a very one-note level. You're just going along the train, sneaking past or murdering everyone. And I felt like it could have been half as long. And it, there were a lot of cars in that train. It just kept going. And I just don't think it needed to be that long.
Nope.
So like those are really my main 2 complaints. Like as a narrative set piece moment, I think it's fine. I don't know, like none of the playing of it like was what I want out of Hitman. But
I think that's fair.
Yeah, but I mean overall, I mean, Dartmoor I might have not enjoyed quite as much, but I mean all of the other maps besides Dartmoor and the final one, the Carpathian Mountains, like those other 4 I thought were all pretty strong maps I liked in Hitman 3.
Yeah, I like all 4 of those. I like Dartmoor fine. I probably like Berlin and Mendoza probably the best, and then Dubai, and then Dartmoor and Chongqing were probably about the same for me.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot. You get to make a greatest hits Hitman game.
Mm,
So, each of these games have 6-ish maps. So
okay.
you're releasing one game that is only 6 maps culled from all 3 of these games. What are your 6?
Man. Okay, Paris for sure.
Yep.
I might have to go back and forth some.
Yeah, that's fine. Can be in any order.
I'm not going to worry about story here. I'm
Yeah.
going to worry about what I think are the 6 most interesting maps, or well executed maps.
Cull a set of 6 maps to present to someone and be like, this is the best of Hitman.
Okay. I think I have to put Whittleton Creek in there.
Oh yeah.
So Paris and Whittleton Creek, I think, are locks. I think Berlin is a lock for me. That's one from each game already.
I will say I also agree with all 3 of those maps.
Yeah. Okay. I cannot decide. So there's like the set of Sapienza, Mumbai, Mendoza, and I probably put Miami in that group. They all feel about the same, but I don't need all of them, right? I might pick Mumbai out of all those.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah. I think I would.
I think you'd also pick Sapienza.
That's a good choice. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so I think maybe I would go Sapienza, and a possibly controversial pick for the last slot would be Isle of Seagal, even though it's not my favorite level. I think it's interesting and cool in a way that none of the others are.
I can respect it.
How would yours be different?
I might trade Isle of Seagal for probably Miami.
I could see that, yeah.
The other 5, I think, are my top 5, which were Paris, Sapienza, Mumbai, Whittleton Creek, and Berlin. I think those are probably my 5 favorites.
Yeah.
I think if we're doing a 6, I think the 6th one for me could be like, I think if I'm being honest, Miami is my number 6. But I think if we want to like get something like a little more adventurous and not add another like standardish map, like I could see picking an Isle of Seagal or a Hokkaido or a Mendoza, like one of those like later game maps from one of the games.
Yeah, for sure.
I could see that. But I think Paris and Sapienza, like they were the first 2 maps, but I think they're both just such strong, iconic, like generally good, like they're the ones that set the standard. Like they're still good standard Hitman maps.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think with Mumbai and Whittleton Creek, you get the like good, like, the good stuff we talked about Hitman 2, just having really strong settings and like just kind of firing on the basics at the same time. And then we talked about Berlin. So like, those 5, I think you get different flavors. I think the 6th one, it just depends on what you're trying to go for with the collection. I think if I'm being honest about the maps I enjoyed the most, Miami would probably be my number 6.
Yeah. I think that would probably be accurate for me too. Miami would be my 6th favorite. Yeah. There's a lot of good maps in this series.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think you have a favorite game overall? I think you do, and I think I know what the answer is, and I think it's my answer. But
well, let's find out. I think my favorite overall is Hitman 2.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite.
And
I think like I feel like I have the most positive vibes and feelings about the first one, but I think that's just because it was new and the first one. But I think like sitting here looking at this list of maps, like I think Hitman 2 is the strongest game. Like I think that's the one where they were like there's just no real weak map in that game. Like I just think everything's good.
That's what I was thinking. There are literally 7 maps that I like in Hitman 2.
Yeah. I guess
6, sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean they all of these have 6 maps if you don't count the ICA facility. And yeah, like I look at Hitman 2's 6 maps and I'm like, I like all of those maps. They're all really good maps. Whereas both Hitman 1 and 3, I have at least one map where I'm like, like none of them are bad, but like I could leave. I could do without Colorado and the Carpathian Mountains. Like,
right, yeah.
But yeah, I think Hitman 2 is just across the board. It's on average has the strongest maps. Like, it felt like they were just really confident in what they were doing and were just making good maps and good variety in them, and just really funny stuff too. Yeah. I guess kind of last thing, if you want to touch on any narrative stuff before we wrap up. I don't know if there's like, I mean, there was a persistent story through all 3 of these games.
Yeah.
I mean, it started in the first game. I mean, it's mostly relegated to cutscenes.
Yes.
As you mentioned earlier in Hitman 3, it kind of comes to the fore a little more. And I think for me, I enjoyed it more when it was kind of more on the periphery. Like, I think when it was more on the periphery, it like walked that balance we were talking about earlier about how like the high level is super serious, but then your actual actions are really goofy. And I think in Hitman 3, when they brought it like more into your, like when they made it more pervasive and more in the actual levels, the story, it maybe broke that dynamic a little more for me and just didn't quite work.
Yeah, a little bit for sure. I think overall, again, I'm going to say Hitman 2 probably struck the best balance of this, of the narrative and how interesting it was and how it played with the levels.
Yeah.
Because the first game really is most of the game. You're just taking contracts. You're part of the ICA, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. The first game is very story light. Like you can, if you're not paying attention, it almost feels like there's no story at all.
Yeah. And there definitely is a story that they're building to, that they get to in the sequels, but you know, it doesn't feel that way when you're playing it. And then 2 is when you start to realize, oh, they're doing something here. Agent 47's personality and his character and his backstory are coming into play. There are important NPCs who are getting mixed up in the espionage thriller aspects of the story. There's this secret organization that you're now kind of pivoting to try to take down, and it's kind of tense in parts into, like you're not quite sure how it's going to go, and then you start realizing that it's also building towards conflict with the ICA, which is like the most boilerplate thing ever, that you turn against your, the people who trained you to be an assassin, but it works fine. And then 3, I think it's not bad by any means narratively. I think they do a good ending to that trilogy for what it is. I think 2 is where they strike the best balance of like, okay, this feels like a real espionage thriller storyline. It has characters that I care about and conflicts that I'm interested in. And those kind of inform the settings that you're in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think the overall like through line plot across all 3 games is fine. It's done well enough. It's not super novel. It's kind of standard spy thriller stuff. But it's done well enough. And I think 2 is like the first one. It's kind of just in the background. But I think 2, they hit a ramp of like, oh, you are building towards something. There is a clear through line, but it's not really getting in the way of the gameplay and the goofiness. Where I think in 3, it maybe intrudes a little too much. primarily probably in the China and Mendoza maps. Like,
Yeah.
there can be some, and obviously the Carpathian Mountains is its own thing, but like those final 3 maps, it just, I think when you get into the set PC stuff, it gets a little weird with the tone of Hitman, and then B, the replayability. Like we said, the Carpathian Mountains is just not a map you want to play over.
Yes.
Yep. But yeah, I don't know that I have much else to say about the story overall. Like, I think it's fine, and it provided a framework. Because I remember when the first game came out, we were like, oh, these are just standalone maps. Like, there wasn't really a promise or a thought of like a real narrative. It was just like, it's a world of assassination. It's a big playground. Like, there wasn't much.
Yeah.
At least that's what I remember at the time. But like, yeah, they did build on it.
Yeah, and I will say that I think a lot of people, and myself included, were pleasantly surprised with the narrative in Hitman 2 when it did that ramp up and it became a bigger, more resonant part of the game. It was like, oh, they didn't have to do this at all. Like, the game was fine when it was a little bit more disjointed or just kind of bare bones in terms of narrative, but they did it, and they did it well.
Yeah.
They definitely don't misstep, I don't think, especially in that second game. So I think overall, I like the trilogy more with the narrative they did than I think I would like it if they just didn't do any of that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad there was a semblance of story there. Like,
yes,
I could do without some of the set PC stuff in Hitman 3, but like, I'm like, overall, I like what they did better than if there was just no story.
Yeah, I will take that trade-off if we get some stuff that doesn't quite work towards the end of the story, but get sort of that narrative through line. I'll take that trade.
Yeah, for sure. I guess before one final question I have for you before we do our wrap up thoughts. Do you want more Hitman?
That's a great question.
If they made a Hitman 4, would you be like, all right, sign me up? Or do you feel like, they've done 3 games and like, that's probably good enough?
Yeah, I think if it was literally, here's a Hitman 4 in the exact same style, 6 more maps, same mechanics, we're just going to tell another storyline or whatever, I would probably be interested enough to play it, but I wouldn't be like hyped about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think I would need some sort of twist or new angle on it to really get me excited about more of these, because I've played a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would look at a Hitman 4 in the same style and just be like, no thanks. I think I would still be like, okay, yeah, those are fun games. I don't think I would be super hyped.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm pretty much in the same boat, but I also look at it and be like, yeah, I'd play it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'd probably play it.
I may not be like super jazzed about it, and I would kind of want them to do something different, but I like, if they came out and be like, yeah, it's 6 more maps in this style, I'd be like, yeah, I'll play that.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what I would want them to change, because like, kind of going back to what we were saying at the very beginning, like, I feel like they've kind of like, starting with Hitman 2016, like, I feel like they kind of nailed, like they have finally hit on that Hitman assassination, stealth action, whatever formula. Like, I feel like they kind of nailed it. So it's like, I kind of don't know what I'd want them to do. I mean, I think the real answer is I want that team to work on new games, new IP, which they are. Like,
guess what?
their next game is the James Bond game, so they are moving on to something else. Like, I think that's the real answer, is that team's clearly talented, so I want them to do other things. But, if they do return to Hitman, it's like, they've kind of nailed the formula, and if they try something different, I have a hard time seeing what they could do that would be better than what they're already been doing.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know, but I have faith that they can probably figure something out.
Yeah. And with that, give me your final wrap up thoughts for the Hitman trilogy. I mean, I'm guessing we've probably said a lot of it, but what do you want to say before we sign off here?
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered my thoughts. It's a really cool series that does a lot of stuff in spaces that I don't think I've seen in other games personally. Obviously, there's not a lot of necessarily wholly new ideas in this trilogy, but I think it's the things that it does bring together. It creates a different gameplay experience than I feel like I've gotten from any other games.
I feel like they have assembled the pieces in a way that I've not seen before.
Yes. So I think that's really cool. I really enjoy it, and I hope that they make a good, fun video game that I want to play.
That would be cool.
Yep.
Yeah, my final thoughts are pretty similar. Like, yeah, I've never been a huge stealth guy, and they did so many smart things, like starting with the Hitman, the first one, Hitman 2016. Like, they did so many smart mechanical things of just making a good stealth action game that I like to play, and then combined with the sprawling clockwork levels and just all of the fun playgroundy stuff you can do in them. Like, it's definitely a game that when they announced it, I was like, oh, this is not for me. And then, like, kind of like you said, just like that slow burn over the year of watching people play it, there's something here. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of hard to put your finger on, but like they definitely hit on a really special formula.
Yeah, I kind of do want to kick this dislocated toilet off of a roof onto someone's head. That sounds all right.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, they somehow took all of the stuff that should, like, you think of how stealth games can be tedious. You think about how, like, clockwork type games can be tedious, because we didn't talk about that much, but like a lot of times that kind of stuff can be tedious. Like, it feels like they took a lot of traditionally tedious, like, game design, game mechanics stuff, and like somehow wrapped it into a thing that's a really fun, like, borderline power fantasy in a way. Like, it's not power fantasy in that you're a superhero just beating everyone up, like, but like you feel power, you feel like a predator in these maps, and like it plays well, and you have the tools to work with, and the all of the UI feedback and everything. Like, it's a really smart game, and it's just a lot of fun to play around in. And not something I would have liked as much as I did, but I really enjoyed all three of these games.
Yep, absolutely.
And every time I finished one of them, I was like, oh yeah, I think I got my fill of Hitman. And then they come out with another one, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's do this.
I'm back in.
And then I enjoy that. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun with this trilogy. And I think with that, we're going to call this an episode of Atacs. We have discussed, spoiled, deep dove into the Hitman trilogy. I have been Flex, joined by Nate, and we are signing off of Atacs. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.